I'm Earl Coughlin, director of a whole bunch of stuff here. I'm not really doing this officially. I'm doing it as a favor to our two guests of honor. I would like to take this moment to introduce the hosts of the Mystery Science Fiction 3000 Theater, Kevin Murphy and Mike Nelson.
Better. Yeah. I always sit on this side. I'm used to sitting on this side from being under the table, looking at his thigh area with a puppet over my head.
It's too early for my thigh area to be discussed in any way at all. After noon, we can talk about my thighs.
How's everybody doing? Y'all having fun at this here con? People of Georgia treating you well? Was anybody beaten last night? Is that what I'm hearing? I mean, against their will?
Oh, Kevin, again, it's only 11:30, please. I feel like our table is too sort of large and important for us. Is there any way we could smallen our table? So, Kevin?
How shall we begin?
What have you been up to?
Well, let's see. I love this Monday morning session. I feel like Jimi Hendrix at Woodstock. You know, nobody was awake for it, and yet it was the greatest session of the whole dang performance, and everybody loved it. So we're going to rock your world and send you home with some memories, and you'll say, I was there back in 2002, and Mike and Kevin are up on the bass.
Does that mean I have to get a headband and put LSD in it and so it leaks into my eyes, man?
Exactly. Let's see. We have Mike and I and all the cast members of Mystery Science Theater have gone many separate ways since the show went out of production. I'm guessing most people here know that the show is still in reruns on Saturday mornings on the Sci-Fi Channel. I see by the nods. And I wish they could get more episodes, but there's the issues, the films that we have, you know. Some people have decided they just don't want us to do it anymore, and the relicensing of the films is very expensive and blah 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 and they just don't want to pay the damn money is what it comes down to. But it's still there, and I'm kind of proud of that because when I was a kid, I always watched those pajama shows on Saturday morning and the Three Stooges and the Little Rascals, and if we end up in that sort of odd channel of history, I'll be happy.
Although I had the feeling when they bought it for another year, it's like, hey, you fired us because we sucked apparently, so why are you buying it for another year? You know, like, should have just kept us on, but I'm happy it's there.
So it may be there for a while, who knows? Mike and I are really sort of separate from the company Best Brains that operates and distributes and licenses the show, so we're not really part of those decisions anymore, and that's just as well. It's just kind of fun sometimes to get up on Saturday morning when my nieces and nephews are over and sit in my pajamas and watch the show that I was on. It's really sort of cool, so I'm always grateful to have been a part of that. Let's see, the next thing that we did together, which is probably the most interesting stuff, Mike and Bill Corbett and Paul Schurston, also known as Paul Chaplin, and Pat Brancic and I got together and formed a little .com company. Wasn't that brilliant? And we produced an animated sort of series sort of for the Sci-Fi Channel sort of website called The Adventures of Edward the Less.
Thank you.
And considering how little money we had, I was really happy with the way at least the scripts turned out. And the images were great. The images were created by a team called Fastener Larson, Rich Larson and Steve Fastener, who are here at this convention. And they're terrific artists. They also did the cover of this goofy book that I wrote. And I was very happy to have them involved. And it really didn't go anywhere because once again the Sci-Fi Channel was changing its management, and they actually fired the person who was in charge of us and didn't replace him, and that seems to be our legacy.
We get people fired.
The people,
including ourselves.
Yes. Constantly, the people who have been in charge of us have ended up getting fired and not coming back, and they don't replace the position, so we punched holes in many networks now.
Yes.
It's very odd. Well, at the end of that time, I had been having a hankering to write a book, and I had a friend at HarperCollins who was an editor named Tom Dupree. And I said, Tom, I have this strange idea for a book, because I started going back to actual movie theaters after Mystery Science Theater was over, and I really didn't like the experience anymore. It wasn't any fun anymore. It was sort of just like going and watching a giant screen TV and not seeing anything I wanted to see. All these giant multiplexes are popping out in the suburbs like Walmarts, and people would just file in and pick their movies off of a board like they were at the Kentucky Fried Chicken, and they just sort of file in and then sort of file out, and nobody seemed to be entertained. And I started asking folks, are you better off than you were 2 hours ago? And they'd look at me strange and wish I'd go away. But I got into my mind that somebody needs to write about movies from the point of view of the audience. And I'd sort of been a professional audience member for a long time, so I thought I was qualified to do this. I'm a movie-going Iron Man. So I said to Tom, I know we'll need something to sell the book, so why don't I promise to go to a theater and see a movie every day of the year for the entire year of 2001 and chronicle the results in a book week by week. And he said, first of all, you're out of your skull. And then he told me to go ahead and do it. And I did, and I made it, and I survived, and I went to 10 different countries and 4 continents, and I chronicled it in this little book called A Year at the Movies. It's now at bookstores. People are holding it up. It'll be the little red book of the film-going audience, so please buy it because you'll have to in a few years. It was the first thing I'd done on my own since Mystery Science Theater, well, actually since before Mystery Science Theater, and it was a wonderful experience to do something that was completely my own and get away from these stiffs over here, because, I love collaborating, but it was also sort of a test of my own mettle to see if I could go out and accomplish something on my own, and I'm very proud of the way it turned out. I wanted to see what it was like not only here at the local Googleplex, but I also wanted to know what the alternatives were and offer those to people who seem to have forgotten how to go to the movies. And it's mainly because nobody helps you do that anymore. Hollywood and the media and everything, they will review these in the back of the book, say your entertainment magazines. They'll review all the obscure and allegedly important movies, and then in the front of the book they'll do profiles on big budget mediocre filmmakers, and so you quite often never hear about the alternatives there are to going to the Googleplex and picking your movie off a menu board. So I went out to find those, and in doing so I got to see a movie in an igloo in Quebec. I dressed as a nun for the sing-along Sound of Music in London, which I highly recommend. Everything about it. The nun costume.
He claims that's why he dressed as a nun.
Has anybody done this, gone to the sing-along Sound of Music? Did you do it in London, or did you do it here in the States? In Tampa. Was it just absolutely nuts? Absolutely. Yeah. Far better than Rocky Horror. Yeah. That's what I found. Is Rocky Horror has, for its wonderful and courageous roots, it's become sort of an odd church for dumb shits, is the way I look at it.
Wow.
I don't know. It may be a controversial opinion, but it's mine and I own it. So if you don't like it, sorry. Let's see. I went to the South Pacific because I knew of a wonderful little theater on the island of Rarotonga, the Empire Twin. It's a twin theater, thank God. The theater's made of coral walls, and it has a tin roof, and it rains every day in Rarotonga, so the rain just pounds down on the roof during the movie, and wonderful little things at theaters like this. Watching a film and it stops dead in the middle of a reel, and I figured the film was broken, but suddenly people get up and they start filing out of the theater, and they go to the snack bar and get their tutti frutti ice cream, and they just put an intermission in the middle of the film. These are the kind of things that I just don't see anymore. I went looking for people who show cartoons or something before films. Now, is there a single person in this room who wouldn't want to have a short or a cartoon before their feature film? Everybody like that idea? I still wonder why it's not done, and I still wonder why the movie-going experience has become so bland, and the fact that the movies themselves have become so bland is, is part and parcel with it. So I sought out a lot of different alternatives, and I bitched and moaned about the things that we have to put up with now. And if you don't mind, I'd just like to read a relevant chapter to everybody in this room, I think, who's a Mystery Science Theater fan. It's a chapter about when I went to see a movie with Michael J. Nelson here, who's, can't think of anybody better to go see a movie with, except perhaps my wife.
Especially the movie. I was touched that you invited me to this, Kevin.
Yes. I entitled the chapter, and many of you all that identify with this. This is week 42. The book was divided up into weeks, and every different week I would do a different theme. One week I sat in the front row of the theater. One week I lived on a diet of nothing but movie theater food. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, babe.
He started to have the complexion of pump cheese during that time. It's like,
I'm going to actually post a small recipe book on the website for things you can make at home with the leftover movie theater food, including the popcorn omelet. Now, I'll just give you that one quick, You grind up the popcorn and you mix it with the popcorn oil ooze, that you have. And then you melt in some gummy worms and you put it in the frying pan and you flip it over and you got a popcorn omelet. It's as delicious as you guys think it is.
tastes just as good on the way back out as it did.
I also, because I didn't really need to go to see a different movie every day because it was not only nearly impossible, but I wanted to be able to do things like, I wanted to find out if the date movie still existed. So I took 6 different women on dates to the same date movie, which is serendipity, and it was a failure, of course. The movie, not the dates. The dates were just fine, much to the consternation of my wife, who was a little concerned about that. And, okay, I'll just read this chapter and maybe talk a bit more about the book afterwards, but I had so much fun doing it, and I hope people have as much fun reading it as I did doing it, because it's just a riot to do something like this. This chapter is entitled, Pain Don't Hurt. Bad movies cannot be good. All right now, you pants-wetting little Nancy boys, you Barbie-loving party-dressed femi-girls, time to get tough, you infants. Forget bungee jumping, that's for brokers on retreat. Forget your lights-out steel cage matches, that's nothing but men rubbing each other. Put that triathlon bikini in the Goodwill bin. It's time to test your will, your resolve, your pain threshold. We're going to see Corky Romano. I've known NFL linemen to turn pale at the mention. Women's kickboxing champions run and hide. Sheep castrators whimper and cry. Corporate consultants fill their pants. Me, I'm just getting into the groove. I saw the trailers for Corky Romano this summer and was convinced it could be the most terrible movie of the year. Then the reviews came out, and except inexplicably for the LA Times, critics unanimously disliked the movie with an intensity once reserved for Nazi rallies. And they implied a nascent desire to slap Chris Kattan hard enough to leave finger marks. I had to go. I have seen a whole lot of bad movies in my day, let me tell you. They'd come streaming into the offices of Mystery Science Theater in their bright, colorful packages like evil Christmas presents. Over 10 years, we looked at more than 3,000 of them. I'm a professional. I know what I'm doing. Time to gear up. I call my friend Mike Nelson. For 10 years, he sat and watched these horrid movies with me. He rarely flinched. He always kept us cool. Only once, early on, did we resort to drinking tequila to get us through a day of writing jokes, while watching the Mexican film Robot versus the Aztec Mummy. In fact, Mike and our editor Brad, after sitting through a day of bad movies, would often then go to a theater and pay to see something with, say, Jennifer Aniston or Jay Moore in it, for the love of God. Our conversation goes thusly. Mike? Kevin? Mike, my friend, Corky Romano. Ah, yes, Corky Romano. When? It's that easy. Granted, now not everybody can call up Michael J. Nelson, who is perhaps the funniest person alive, and head out to a crappy film with him, so I count myself extremely lucky. This isn't a guilty pleasure. I don't celebrate bad films. I think the Golden Raspberries are a waste of time. I don't have a so bad they're good category. I don't go to conventions and trade copies of the pirate movie. Movies that are bad are just that. They exhibit an obvious lack of quality sufficient to cause aversion in the general public. There is nothing good about them. It's all in the watching. Mike and I meet at the theater, the crummy little 8-screener in Edina. I've been going there a lot this week, sort of trashing around, not unlike choosing to go out to loud smoky bars with bad tap beer and Tombstone pizzas. I pay, it's my book. And I bought the beer, 2 generous cans of Foster's Special Bitter, perfect for a movie theater because they're 22 ounces, they don't clink like glass bottles, and they fit neatly into the cup holders. The theater is jammed with high school kids. The annual Minnesota Education Association meeting takes place smack in the middle of October, giving the kids and teachers alike an excuse to goof off for 2 days. Even during the movie, the conversation is loud and rapid. Cell phones are answered and yelled into. Painters sing their dumb little tunes. It's a continual din, like the wheat pit at the Board of Trade, except everybody's saying, dude, and wondering where the party is. They think they're here to see a comedy, all except Mike and I and our Fosters. There is nothing more pathetic than a bad joke. If you've ever been to a comedy club on open mic night, you'll know what I mean. And as the movie unfolds and the initial willful laughs fade, the room becomes silent, then restless, then downright annoyed. The movie is a pathetic mess, a train wreck. Nothing happens funny, at least not by intention. Attempts to add dimension to the characters and pathos to the plot simply hurt. The whole movie hurts. We're sitting on coarse grit sandpaper. Mike groans and squirms in his chair. I begin to sweat and pant loudly. Bear down, it can't be more than 80 minutes, can it? It's 85. Chris Kattan is no funnier than a televised colostomy. Oh. I have an opinion about this. Ever since America mistakenly enjoyed Jerry Lewis, periodically some suited cloud in an office in Century City gets it in his head that we need to see another convulsive monkey do shtick. This is how we got Robin Williams, Jim Carrey, Rob Schneider, Adam Sandler, Carrot Top. Chris Farley's death spared him this indignity. And now we have Chris Kattan, who in Corky isn't even funny enough for 12-year-olds. If you can't be funny enough for 12-year-old boys, you should switch careers. And this is why the filmmakers tried to wedge some warmth and heart into the film to appeal to the girls, the poor girls. So the real joy is watching the whole thing go to smash, to see the film wither and die in hopes that careers will get pulled down in the suction, which unfortunately they never do. The film stole $20 million of our money and then ran to the video store. Debut director Rob Pritz came from the advertising world where all great directors begin their careers. Writers David Garrett and Jason Ward made a big splash with a humorous short about old ladies playing Russian roulette and splattering their brains all over a nice living room. They may well be on their way to becoming the next Lowell Gans and Babalu Mandel. Now then, Chris Penn plays Corky's mobster brother as a rock-stupid latent homosexual. What the hell happened to him? A few years ago, he was digging out from under the leaden weight of the Penn name. Reservoir Dogs, Shortcuts, The Funeral, good roles, well acted. But now here he is, making a mess of a bad role. Worst, he's gained at least 800 pounds, and all of it is in his head. He's become this Macy's balloon animal version of himself, straining the skin of his face to the point where it might burst, sending subcutaneous fat all over unwitting press members and premier party guests. And please say some prayers for Peter Falk. Peter plays Corky's dad, a vile, bigoted, yet loving mobster on his deathbed. Now here's a guy with a bookshelf full of awards who's worked with Wim Wenders, David Mamet, John Cassavetes, Walter Hill, once the highest paid actor in TV history. A legend whose multifaceted career spans over half a century. Now at 74, he's doing Corky Romano. Do you know the risk he's running? He could croak tomorrow and his obituary would have to mention that his last film was Corky Romano. Would you want that in your obit? It'd be worse than dying of syphilis. Think of poor Peter Sellers, whose last film was the fiendish plot of Dr. Fu Manchu, and he never got a chance to live it down. The lesson here is to be careful in your old age, and if you're over 60, under no circumstances do a movie starring Chris Kattan. In the theater, the teenage audience is getting edgy. 45 minutes in, 2 kids leave, then 3 more, then about 6 at once. Right at Chris Kattan's supposed trademark line as he stands at a doorway in a Girl Scouts uniform croaking, "You guys want some cookies?" There's a rush for the door. A full third of the audience will abandon the thing before the ending out of sheer agony. They will not sit still for the sublime pain. I like it. I like watching the reaction of a crowd to something that is truly bad. The American teenage audience has spectacularly low expectations for movies, as they have since the invention of the teen movie. This year, I've seen people walk out smiling from the likes of Joe Dirt, The Animal, and Saving Silverman, having enjoyed a few scant laughs and the occasional attractive boy or girl. But Corky is different, and the crowd knows it. I watch the kids look at each other as if there's something wrong with the projector instead of the movie. It isn't meeting their basement-level expectations of what is minimally funny or entertaining. And it gets worse as the movie gallops out of control towards its inevitable end. It has to end. Even Berlin Alexanderplatz had an ending. And as the jokes seem to become more repetitive or more desperately odd, this is when people stream from the theater, made uneasy by the furtive and spastic nature of the third act, as if the film has become unstable and might come out into the audience, grab someone and hold them hostage with a kitchen knife. I'm cringing, rocking back and forth in my chair as if I'm on a charter plane on the way back from Mexico with 2 broken toilets. This happened to me. Mike, who normally sits as stoic and serene as Gautama under the Bodhi tree, is starting to sweat. Good God, how long is this thing? The movie wants to end, but keeps on going. The theater has become so empty the ushers may as well sweep up. I think of the 1974 Chicago Bears. The 3-11 Bears, the Agony Bears, the Pre-Peyton Bears, the team coached by Abe Gibran, whose record was 11-30-1. And quarterbacked by Bobby Douglas, a man who threw a football harder than a relief pitcher and once put an easy slant pass squarely in the numbers of a referee. The team that caused me to stop caring about football for the rest of my life. I think of these Bears at frigid Soldier Field, closing out their 5th consecutive losing season by losing 21-0 to the Green Bay Packers. It's the 4th quarter. The wind whips the top tier of the bleachers like a North Sea gale. 2 minutes left. Douglas loses the ball and the Green Bay picks it up, sealing the doom. The crowd has dwindled to those scant few weeping idiots who believe the team is winning or losing because of them. Nobody cares. This is what the last 10 minutes of Corky Romano are like. The theater becomes Soldier Field in the 4th quarter. Chris Kattan throws jokes harder than Bobby Douglas. No amount of beer could make the experience better. But we stay until the credits. We may be the last ones out of the theater. Well, this is why I came, to witness failure as it happens, to learn and to enjoy. I enjoy it because the humor transcends the film itself. The makers of the film and the actors stuck in it become players in a bizarre comedy beyond their reckoning. They become the
Hang on. Aristotle in the Poetics wrote of comedy with universal relevance. But inherent in my reading of Aristotle is the thought that all forms of drama, comedy included, satisfy us because of an essential foundation in craft. As Shakespeare said,
they hold the mirror up to read. They reflect their actions and their consequences back in ways in which we can understand them and better for the experience. Corky Romano was entirely unsatisfying because the filmmakers do not know the first thing about comedy as set out by Marley Headlong Reed more than 2,000 years ago. Corky is simply a series of adolescent jokes, which is good, with nothing to hold them together. Without consciously realizing it, our teenage Corky audience knew this, and it sent them screaming from the theater. So there, you can gain something from reading classical texts and going to see a really bad film. But it takes guts and determination, and a big can of Foster's special bitter certainly helps.
There's a little impression of Peter Falk in that movie. Anyone? Does Peter Falk, his eyes sort of swollen shut, he look like some... Terrible.
Very sad. So I'm touring with this book right now, and if you buy it, I hope you enjoy it, and it makes a great Christmas present. So that's all I've been doing. So I'll let Mike talk about himself for a while. I'll take a nap.
I've been working on my yard a little bit. No, I've since Mystery Science, Kevin, you know the things that we've worked on together. I've done a couple of books. One's Mike Nelson's movie Mega Cheese, which is sort of an exploration of bad movies based on the theory that the best bad movie ever made is Roadhouse. And if bad movies can ever get to that level, they actually can succeed. And I wrote another book which came out in March, called Mike Nelson's Mind Over Matters, and that's available at bookstores near you. And in April of next year, I have another book coming out, a novel called Death Rat, about a large, intelligent rat. It's about more than that, but so that's what I've been up to, and I'm working on a screenplay right now, and lots of secret projects that make me sound like I'm a loser, but it's just stuff that I can't talk about because some executive always screams at you after that, because we were supposed to do the press release on that, you idiot, and then you get fired, and and so. But I taped a pilot for a TV show, which I can't talk about because they'll kill me, and so that's what I've been up to.
A lot of secrets and lies.
Lots of secrets and lies, and a lot of
what I'm
drinking.
hearing.
But I thought what we might do, what?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Is open it up for questions, because sometimes I don't know what you guys want to know, so if that's all right, can we
Mr.
just...
Soundman, is this microphone available for use over here? Would that be okay? Oh, that's great. So
Thank you.
if people have any questions, it might be smart to politely line up at this
Yeah, you
microphone
can just
over
step
here.
up to this mic.
And if you don't have questions, then that'll just, make lunch a little earlier.
I don't actually have a question.
Oh, wait, your mic's not up yet. If you ask us, we'll repeat it.
Yeah,
We
until the
promise
mic
to do
works.
it accurately.
I don't actually have a question.
He doesn't actually have a question. He doesn't actually have a question.
I know I speak for myself and my row of buds over here and probably every single soul in this theater. You two are responsible for the senses of humor of probably everybody in here.
Go on, go on.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Did everybody hear what he said? Okay, good. Because implant that in your brains because it's important. We want to stay there. That's very flattering. Thank you very much.
I'm one of the people that help circulate the tapes.
Good.
It's almost like a cult, getting more people to join us. But I just want to thank you guys
Thank you.
for helping shape a whole generation of TV watchers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I've always loved the fact and been very proud of the fact that we encourage people to circulate tapes without doing it for profit, because it did get the word out in a way that TV advertisers couldn't. Promoters never understood the show, but the people who watched it understood it, and that's why they were excited enough to trade tapes with each other. And that's what word of mouth is all about. And I greatly appreciate it. It really made the show work and helped it be as popular as it was.
The writer of Soul Taker?
The writer of Soul Taker, Vivian Schilling, yeah.
Did you speak to her?
She quickly nicked my soul while I was having lunch.
I figured that was the case.
Yeah. No, we didn't have the pleasure.
Didn't run into Soul Taker, no.
What do the film? You get asked this a lot, I'm sure. What do the filmmakers think say when they talk to you? You must get a lot of mixed reactions.
We kind of hear it secondhand. We never, I don't think I've ever run into anyone that did it. I heard someone, who was the woman who had a pretty mind or had such a beautiful mind?
Oh, yeah, from the girl in the gold boots.
Such a pretty mind. Yeah, she ran into Frank Conniff and said, I saw you, I saw this show and I was being made fun of, and she was sort of hurt by it. I don't know whether she thought she had done a good performance or what, but...
It was very sad. Other than that, what Joe Dante, we heard, was really cheesed off because we made fun of Marooned, the movie Marooned, which fell out of, fell into public domain for a while and became known as Space Travelers. It was rebranded by some cheesy distributor, and he thought it was a classic film, and so he said he stopped watching our show after that, and, well, tough nipples, Joe.
And of course, the beefy Joe Don Baker. Of course. Very, very angry at us, apparently. He was so angry, he stopped eating a burrito for just a second. So it's like,
I believe the quote was, I was going to run and kick them back to dad when I see them.
And that's how he was quoted in the LA Times.
yes, go ahead.
I wanted to know, despite some of the crappy programming that's been going on with sci-fi, if we will ever see more adventures of Edward the Less.
Oh, well, here's the thing about Edward the Less. We originally wanted to do it as a full-motion animated series because I thought that would be really fun. They just didn't have the money. So we did this sort of static thing, kind of like a Clutch Cargo style animation there. And they liked it, and they got good reaction, and then they just simply pulled the money out of their online entertainment budget. It's just simply gone. And if you ever go to that part of Sci-Fi Channel website, there hasn't been anything new since Edward the Less, and that's a full year, so that speaks volumes about what they want to do. They don't believe in entertainment programming anymore. Barry Diller came in, and he's turning all of their online services into ways of selling more USA Network-related materials. And, you know, more power to him. The guy is a consummate capitalist.
Barry Diller, also known as the Devil, the author of all lies.
Barry, are you here? Good, let's talk about that, asshole. I'm sorry. Thank you.
What is your critique of your favorite and least favorite television shows and/or commercials?
Wow. My favorite and or least favorite television show and or commercial. I'm not fond of any commercials involving drink cups, you know, like the new drink cups at Hardee's. Those kind of make me angry. I don't know why.
The commercials that drive me up a tree are the ones where they're trying to, it's brokers trying to tell you that they're the best broker, and if you're not doing something with your money right now, you are destroying your family. You know, financial planning is critical. If you don't do it, then you'll never be successful and cool like us at Oppenheimer Funds. And they've got Gene Hackman doing the voice. You know, they always get these wonderful voices of confidence in there, and it just drives me crazy. The pressure's on. And of course, most of them are frauds and liars, so why should we believe them in the first place? Are there a lot of brokers in here?
I also don't like shaving commercials. Guys being shot through the air in like these futuristic rockets, and their clothes get ripped off, and then like a sexy, smooth woman comes up and rubs their face, implying other things. It's like, because if you have 3 blades on your razor, you get to have this woman. So.
But oddly, that's my dream, my recurring dream.
Is that you shave and have a smooth woman touch
Then I'm
you?
shot through space, and my clothes are ripped off, and I shave and have a woman rub my smooth face every night.
That's because when you were napping, I ripped all your clothes off.
Okay.
That's why you had that dream.
Yeah. And favorite TV show for me, the one I will actually tune in and watch is The Simpsons. It just has been and always will be.
And mine, Saved by the Bell. No question about it.
Do you like is it the college years, the Saved by the Bell?
No, are you kidding? The early, pure ones. Yes, go ahead.
Hi. I don't know if you remember me. I was at Gateway Con, and I said, "How's it going?" And
Yeah,
I remember
how's
that.
it going now?
it's okay.
Going
I'm a little
okay. Since
tired.
Gateway, things are going well for the guy.
I was just wondering, how far do you plan your con appearances in advance, and if you do have any planned in advance in the future, is that just something you wait until you have an opportunity or a good offer comes?
For me, I just kind of wait until, you know, Kevin calls and says, someone asked me to do a con and they asked you too, and I say yes, and then I forget about it, and Kevin kind of does all the scheduling, and so I really don't know.
I drag Mike along because, you know, he's better looking than me, so it just makes it easier to
That's
do
not
this.
true at all.
We're,
I hate it.
well, bottom line is we're really amateurs at this, and we've done it, and I don't think we realized until yesterday that there was a table down there with our names on it so we could do autographs. So we apologize for not having been there because we just simply really didn't know that you know, we could just go at any time. Thought, you know, we're neophytes, but we will be there after this. For anybody who hasn't gotten an autograph, we will be down there. Thank you. And the other sad and pathetic thing about us is that we didn't bring any material with us to sell. Now, first of all, I don't know if I'm stepping on toes, and this might be why we don't get invited to a lot of conventions, but I don't care to sell a picture of my likeness and then sign it and give it back to a person. I think that's just stupid. So, I mean, you know, it's very nice, and people are very generous when we come here, so if you do that, then what I would probably do is just, you know, find a bunch of old promotional slicks and be down there and sign them, and I won't charge you anything for them. But that's next time. This time, what did I bring? I brought, I got about 100 of these Post-it notes left. And we've got the silhouette-style Post-it note, and we've got some of the Tom Servo I'm Huge Post-it notes. So unless you have a program or something, this is unfortunately what we'll be signing for the people who get in line. So apologies, but we're happy to sign and meet you folks downstairs after this.
Would, if we went to conventions in the future, would anyone be interested if I sold like assorted sundries, like potpourri bags and stuff like that? My jams and jellies.
Soaps?
Yeah, small, elegant soaps shaped like scallops and things like that. Would that be of any interest to anyone? All right, I'm going to do it then. Yes?
Why do you think it is that so many horrible movies actually get made?
That's simple. Nobody gives a shit. No, I mean, it's true. I mean, if anybody cared, I rail on the movie Town and Country in my book. Did anybody see Town and Country?
Huge fan.
Oh, okay, good. I don't know if you even know about this. Do you know about the film Town and Country? You know that it was, yeah, Goldie Hawn, Warren Beatty, Diane Keaton, for crying out loud, Gary Shandling. This was truly a pathetic mess of a film, a really stupid film. It was reprehensible about people that nobody cares about because they're just lecherous New Yorkers who screw each other all the time. And
it's pretty accurate then,
yeah.
It sounds like.
Final cost, I actually am correcting it in the next edition of the book, or the next printing of the book. It wasn't $90 million, it was $100 million, okay? Now how much did Robert Rodriguez spend on Spy Kids and Spy Kids 2? And combined, they were $70 million, I think, okay? And there's not a special effect in this damn film. There's just lumpy old Warren Beatty trying to act like a sexy 30-year-old. Dear God! So there's a petition in the back of the film, and I would love to start this sort of online community. If there was any justice in the world, they would work for us now, all of the four of those cast members. We would approve their next scripts. We would watch the dailies. We would fire them if they didn't act out, and they would work for scale. Otherwise, they simply should each return the $25 million fees that they got for making the movie. Now, how would that sound?
Yes, go ahead.
Do you all have a favorite or least favorite season of MST where everything either fell together or fell apart?
I have a least favorite. I think it was the 6th season,
yeah,
where there were the Coleman Francis films.
Oh, yeah.
During that time, I had, and still have, terrible headaches, and I went to see a neurologist who was like the biggest quack in the world, and he would just prescribe pills that had nothing to do with headache. Hey, try this. It makes your heart 3 times larger. You know, it's like, well, you're the doctor. And Frank was picking movies at that time, and he kept picking these Coleman Francis inexplicably. And I would be sitting in the couch just sunk down with my heart swelling and sweating, and Coleman Francis. So I just have these painful memories of that time.
Yeah.
I don't know how they actually ended up, because I could never watch them again. So.
In my mind, one of the best times to work at Best Brains, it's the way I'd put it, was in the last 3 seasons of the show that were on the Sci-Fi Channel. Because we had just gotten into this groove and we really worked well together, and I think some of the movies we did during that time were the funniest things we had ever done. Thank you. And, but it's really hard to say because every season had its own odd adventures going on. One of the low points was having to deal with a major studio for a movie. Do you get that I'm sort of on a theme here? And I don't think I'd ever go back to a major studio to work on a movie again because the experience was so distasteful working with the studio. Making the movie was great, studio distasteful, so that's what I got to say.
And during our last seasons with Sci-Fi, there was a fella who I shouldn't name because he still exists, this just a pumpkin-headed idiot who he somehow got to be in charge
He
of
was
our
our
show.
executive.
He was, he was sort of a fanboy, and so he got to play with his toy, and that was to mess with our show, and that was incredibly frustrating to have to deal with that.
So we killed him. Sent his parts back to Iowa.
Now that your show is over, I'm wondering if you could tell us which movies you wished you could do if you could have afforded the budget, and have you seen No Retreat, No Surrender?
Haven't seen No Retreat, No Surrender.
No Retreat, No Surrender.
Is this legendarily bad? Or?
Jean-Claude Van Damme's first non-porno film.
Wow. Wow. Well, if it has Van Damme, it's got to be good.
Some of the films that come to mind that we weren't able to get was Baffled with Leonard Nimoy. We were very close to getting that. And Moment by Moment with John.
There's the big moment-by-moment cell over there. And she actually has it with her right there.
Yes.
I love it. I love it. I think at one time there was sort of a TV movie version of the Bill Bixby The Magician show that
Yes.
it was so quintessentially of a period. I just loved it, that he had his little Perry Como haircut, and the perfect sideburns, and he maintained his cool, and he had the little square sunglasses and would wear those little brief mini towels when he'd come out of the bathroom after shaving, and it was just really dreadful stories, and all the stock TV movie characters, Universal stuff. So it was.
And he threw cards at people, right? Was that the?
Like Odd Job?
Yeah, didn't he do this kind of a thing?
No.
Yes.
This question for Mike. I thought you did such a great impression of Jack Perkins, than for doing me,
thanks,
especially on the MST3K hour bit. Did you ever meet him, and did it lead to fisticuffs, or did he want to kick your ass or anything?
No, I actually struck up a little bit of an email conversation with him for a while. His son is our sports guy in Minneapolis, and I met him once just after I started doing the impression, and I had to explain who I was and everything. And he was very nice, and he said, "That's fine." And then they did an impression of him on Saturday Night Live, which I think was sort of an insane, drunken parody of him, and he hated that. And he always liked our impression of him, and he was very. And I had to tell him once, I am going to get drunk in this episode and put my tie on my head. And, well, all right, it was just. Okay. So he was very nice. He's a very nice man. Yes.
Hi. I wanted to ask, are we going to be seeing any more DVD episodes come out? I especially like the fact that on one side you have the movie unmisted, and on the other side it's misted.
Yeah. So you can do it yourself if you'd like to.
We're not as good.
That is entirely up to the ability to procure the rights for the movies and what Rhino Home Video can do to procure those rights, because you'll notice a lot of those films are the public domain films we had. So, they're working. It seems like they're constantly working on more. And actually, 4 more Christmas time? This is the man to ask, too, for any information about like this. Brian Henry and Chris Cornell over here. Yeah. And hey, Chris, Brian, stand up, will you, too? And Steve. I want to acknowledge, is Steve here too? Yeah, I want to just take a moment and acknowledge the guys who do the Mystery Science Theater Info Club website, because if you ever want to know anything about what we're doing and why we're doing it, it's the place to go. And they are very careful and meticulous. They're very professional about it, and I couldn't be happier to have myself represented there. So give them a hand, please. Steve's at the Braves game. Steve's at the Braves game. Okay.
All right, well, I'm an avid movie lover myself, and but I've been going to the movies recently, and I've just noticed that all of these films that keep getting these rave reviews, and they're supposed to be like the greatest thing since, it's just, I go to see them, and I'm just absolutely in pain, and I was wondering if you guys had been having the same thing, and what you thought the worst movie was that ever got like really international, and everybody were telling you this is the great thing and go see it.
Well, at a comedy level, I don't know if these get great reviews, but the Austin Powers series just sits on my head and punishes me. I acknowledge the man's talent, but it's like having vinegar sprayed in my eyes. I can't. It just hurts me, and I realize it's just he's such a strong taste. It's like I don't like blue cheese either, so I don't like Austin Powers. But I don't know if that's quite what you're asking, but that's what I don't like.
I think you can damn near pick any movie that comes out right now and be misled by a lot of reviewers, and I hate that.
The Mission Impossible theme was playing. Yes.
Hello? Yes? Do you want to share it with everybody?
I'm at a stupid panel.
I know. Is she talking on the phone or to the creature on her shoulder there? I'm not sure. Yes, I can't talk. They're making fun of me right now. What? No. Sell that. I want to get back.
Ham and Swiss. Sorry, where were we?
Okay.
Oh, you were talking about.
Oh, I have a chapter in the book called Critics and Other People and How to Tell Them Apart. Because a lot of people who pass for being critics are actually just movie reviewers and who are truly just shills for the industry. Everybody know about the David Manning event that happened? You heard about that? It was a critic fabricated by the publicity department of Sony Pictures and never existed, and they actually just stole the name of a guy from a small newspaper in Rhode Island, I think it was. And it was all just a bunch of bullshit, and that's what I find is, like I said, in a lot of entertainment magazines, in the front of the book, they're lauding a film, and then in the back, in a tiny little review, it'll give it a C-. Now, what the hell is that? I mean, what are we supposed to think? So I think it's very disingenuous, and the only things I read these days are Stanley Kaufman in the New Republic, Dave Kerr in the New York Times, and Elvis Mitchell there. And anytime you pick up a copy of Film Comment, you're actually going to get some real opinions about some good films, and it'll give you a lot of alternatives. So that's my advice.
My question is similar to the last woman's.
But subtly different.
Well, I was curious if in the past year or so, if you've seen any of the major blockbusters, Lord of the Rings, Spider-Man, the Star Wars movies, etc., and if so, if you enjoyed them. And also a request, if you have an opening in your schedule next year, please come back to Dragoncon. On behalf of everyone here, we would love to have you in Atlanta.
Thank you.
To answer your question, I saw Lord of the Rings like 100 times.
Yeah, me too.
I loved it. I just thought it was great.
I'd almost wait in line. I mean, I hate waiting in line for movies, but this is one that I would think about waiting in line for because I want to see the whole thing come to completion, and I really applaud Peter Jackson and everybody who worked with him for doing this. Yeah, absolutely.
I had a huge crush on Viggo Mortensen. I mean, it was just such a... Then Legolas showed up.
Oh, the leggy Legolas.
My attention was split between the two.
Nummy. And yeah, I saw Spider-Man, big deal. Yeah.
Okay, that Vigo thing was really creepy.
Yeah, sometimes I get that way. I'm sorry.
I understand. Two really related questions. What do you think is the easiest genre of film to parody Misty style? And what is your favorite genre to parody?
Yes. I don't know, the easiest, I don't think it fits into a genre. It's always sort of technical concerns about fitting the comments in there, and also, is there anything interesting happening on screen? Because we just couldn't rescue movies that were just, gray guys in offices talking endlessly. It was just too hard to overcome that. But I always enjoyed something with the sort of 60s flair, or like The Girl in the Gold Boots, or something with a strong theme of from a distinct era was always sort of easy to just get out the joke cannon on.
I personally always love the ones whose incompetence just sort of rose to the surface, and I take, for example, Space Mutiny, which I think a lot of people are familiar with. Now, they barely try to mask the fact that they're chasing each other around a basement in golf carts and pretending it's on a spaceship. I love that. And I love the overacting. What's the guy with the skull face and his hair slicked back who's the lead? Calgon, but what was the actor's name? That's right, John Philip Law. And he's just, he's spectacularly hammy, and he's just chewing up the scenery. And there are some of the most glaring inconsistencies I've ever seen in a film. A woman is killed, violently, and then the next day she's back at her console again. You gotta love that kind of thing. And the fact that anybody, it's a sort of, I embrace that kind of incompetence because I just want to say to the director, oh, you poor, stupid man. And it's usually a man, because women would never be that stupid and incompetent in making a film, I swear to God. And the women can see me after this is over.
That particular movie, though, it caused a little thing that happened around Mystery Science, around the offices thereafter. Cameron Mitchell has a really stupid line. He looks like he's drugged with horse tranquilizers or something, and he says, "I'm thinking of the possible motive," in this strange accent. And every time a writer would say, "I'm thinking of the possible motive," stop that. Every time someone said that from there on in.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, I have a quick question about the DVDs. Is there any chance at all we will, even broadcast television or released in any form at all, see the sort of mythological very first season of Mystery Science Theater with
You mean the episodes that were on local TV, the KTMA episodes?
Yeah, I mean, is there legal problems with
Yeah,
this done?
it's just, well, first of all, we pilfered those films in order to put them on the show, so we had absolutely no rights or no license whatsoever. So I don't know if the films will ever make it to the light of day, and it would be up to Best Brains if they wanted to put all of those host segments together as a compilation, but I'm sure people would like to see them. Me, I would be sort of embarrassed to have them out there, but if people want to see what it was like when it was very, very crude, it might be interesting. So I certainly wouldn't object to it, but there are no plans right now. Sorry.
Do you know of anything that can be done to get it across to Hollywood to stop taking really good books or older movies and remaking them with maybe if Lincoln was a transvestite nun, it would appeal to the younger generation and be a much better movie. It's like, it was good the first time. Leave it alone, or if you do the book, do the book.
You're speaking, I bet I know what motivated this question. Mr. Deeds? It's a perfectly good movie. Why would you take Gary Cooper? Is it Gary Cooper, right?
Yes.
Mr. Deeds, yes. Yeah. Adam Sandler. I mean, that's devolving seriously there.
Well, my personal problem, I have a favorite book by Paul Anderson called, now I'm going to forget it out here in front of us, but High Crusade. And I happened to be looking through an online DVD and saw, hey, somebody called a movie the same thing as my favorite book.
Yeah.
And so I read the thing, and somebody made a movie of my favorite book. Ordered it, FedEx, delivered, boom. Okay, well, rather than doing this science fiction story, if you've read Paul Anderson, very much into history, we decided to sort of do a Monty Python-esque takeoff on it. But we didn't quite have Monty Python, so it's not funny anyway.
Right.
And okay, well now nobody's ever going to make that book because somebody blew the script once and then.
Yeah, that's what and I swear science fiction films get mangled more than any other form of literature, although, people have tried to mangle the classics too, Think of the wonderful Island of Dr. Moreau with Val Kilmer and, the simple answer to what you said there is to vote with your feet, man. Don't go see these things. Nobody is forcing you to, If the advance word is that it's going to be crummy or it's doubtful, or I swear to God, you can always tell by the trailers whether the film is going to be good or bad. Have you seen the trailers for Fear.com? Is that going to be good? No! Isn't it obvious? Yeah, so, vote with it. Don't go to, whatever you do, for the love of God, let some other idiot go to the opening weekend. Don't go to the opening weekend of any film. You are simply playing into their hands if you do that. Wait a week.
I saw Master of Disguise on its opening weekend.
Do you know what you've done?
Worse than Corky Romano. I swear it was.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where the actual Tom Servo and Crow at now? Are they part in a prop room somewhere, or does someone have them and keeping them loving?
They're vaulted. You know, a lot of those things were vaulted. What we call the hero puppets, which are the ones that we generally use for on-camera stuff, are vaulted, and as well as parts for. I mean, they're kind of like indie cars. You know, they exist in parts until they need to come together for a performance, and then we take this off of this off of that. If we needed a stunt bot, we had a stunt bot and then a hero bot. So. There's probably enough for half a dozen of each stored away for good safekeeping.
If you come back, you should bring some.
You better get back and man the counter at Chicken Filet.
I'm just a hemorrhoid on the Bird of Paradise.
That is a great hat, I gotta say. It's Hans Christian Parrot head.
Oh
yes.
Considering your opinion of movie critics in general and the absolute dreck we're getting in most food, if I can get my mouth together.
Sold American.
Great. Yes. But what most movies coming out, being absolute trash. Is there any chance that we might be able to convince y'all to actually be honest movie critics and publish columns in local newspaper, syndicated newspapers, so that we can be warned much more fluently and humorously about what we're about to be subjected to?
Thank you. Well,
yeah.
I think I can say that a lot of people will trust your word far more than anyone who's actually on TV.
Well, thank you. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Plus, if we did that, we could get on those press junkets where those buffets, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man.
Pigs in a blanket.
Yeah, indeed. It's one of the reasons why Roger Ebert tends to go up and down and weight so much. Press junket season, he's way up, and then when it's off, he's way down. It's really fun not to have to be influenced by anybody. And even what's his name? Jonathan Rosenbaum of the Chicago Reader wrote a wonderful book called Movie Made America, talking about how he's constantly having to fight off being co-opted by the very publishers who hire him, because guess what? They're part of a company that owns a movie studio, and it does come down on them, and it's a very difficult thing. So that's why I always look to the alternative publications, or the ones that have had enough integrity not to get influenced, like the New York Times, like Film Comment, and like the New Republic, and Chicago Reader. Independent papers do that. I'm sure there's one here in Georgia. And is there a good film critic here in Atlanta that people depend on? No, there isn't. Well, you see, that's the problem. So, hey, maybe we'll have to move to Atlanta and start a column.
Yes.
Go for it. Howdy. Are you aware of the Digital Archive Project and their efforts to keep circulating the tapes digitally of all the episodes we can't buy otherwise?
I've seen a little bit about it, and I haven't heard about it.
Do you support the idea?
I'll have to look at it first. I'm sorry. Does your shirt actually say Blackalicious on it?
It does indeed.
Are you Blackalicious?
No, they live in California, but they're cool.
You're sort of white at hasty, aren't you?
I appreciate it.
Not quite Blackalicious.
But check it out.
Okay, we'll check it out. Thanks.
I just want to say, if you if you're just sitting at home watching TV, you ever find yourself like accidentally MSTing something?
Sort of slip and MST a thing by accident?
Yeah, it's kind of habit.
I tend to really only watch baseball games now. I'm too scared of every other thing on TV. So I get the commercials, I think. You might end up making a few comments, but I think if you're doing it by yourself, then it's time to check into a hospital.
Yeah, generally I just lapse into rank obscenities instead of trying to come up with something clever, I really do. I come up with different ways that people can copulate with each other and hurl that at the screen, and pick a new hole every time and things like that.
Who are you?
I direct it at the screen, not at anybody individually. All right.
Yes.
Is there a particular phrase or song that you did from Mystery Science Theater that comes back to haunt you? For example, at random moments, I will suddenly get Packers going to the Super Bowl, or the dreaded, or Idiot Control Now, or Puma Man, he flies like a moron. These just pop into my mind. Do you have anything like that that haunts you?
Occasionally, if I, have a meter worst and go to sleep really late at night, the song from Puma Man will haunt me. Da 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 da. Yeah.
And for me, because we did it so many times within a couple of episodes, I still get in my head, cameras really need cameras. We believe in camera. Can't help it. It's just drilled itself in there. It's one of them brainworms, man.
I had forgotten for many years a phrase that came back to haunt me a couple months ago. He tried to kill me with a forklift. Yes.
When do we get to see the action figures? Mr. James Earl Jones.
Mike, was that God?
It was God! A little nod to the tech guys over there. Great job there.
Very nice.
Again, not up to us, unfortunately. We don't sit in on marketing meetings for those things, so...
You can have my Willie Ames action figure if you want.
You could, paint his head and put a little bowling pin on him and pretend that he's Crow and put his hair up. Maybe that would work.
Yes.
First of all, I wanted to thank all of you for expanding our minds with humor, not just making us laugh. I've learned so much from Mystery Science Theater just by going, what's that? And investigating it. And the more you know, the funnier it is. So thank you.
So teachers, use it as an instruction tool.
Yes! I was actually wondering, though, if you had any plans to come across the Rockies to the West Coast, do some promotions, things like that? Because since y'all stay on this side of the United States, I can see why, though.
I'm hoping to, before the fall is over, to go to perhaps Book Soup in LA, which is a great bookstore. I might be in Los Angeles for that, for a reading and a book signing. And there's a possibility for Denver as well.
Cool.
So, but nothing is set. Denver? Yes. All right. Great.
Mike, you?
Seattle? No, I'm sorry.
I have to mow the lawn. No, I have no plans. I may be in LA in a little bit to do a taping of a pilot, but there'd be probably no readings there.
You big Rush fans? And if you are, I posted on a message board for them. Do you have anything for the fans to say? Because I know a lot of them are big fans of yours. And they'd love to hear you say something or...
Rush was my first concert, man. Yeah.
There you go.
Moving Pictures Tour.
Nice.
Yes. So I love those guys. Yeah.
I was always astounded by two things about that band. First of all, Geddy Lee playing keyboards and bass at the same time. That's pretty dang cool. And Neil Peart's 360 degrees of drums, which always blew me away.
And they're Canadian. You gotta love Canadians.
And yes, indeed. And I think this will be our last question. So here he is.
Right. Don't screw it up.
I'd like to introduce William Frawley from I Love Lucy, too. William Frawley, ladies and gentlemen.
Because of you, I've been banned from several theaters in Mobile, Alabama. I just want to let you know that. And I have friends that will not go to the theater with me.
Blame it on us now.
This isn't like
That's
a
right,
Paul.
pass the buck.
This is not a Paul Rubens type of band, is it? Just want to get that straight before you.
It's all good. Have you ever been asked to be on Space Ghost Coast to Coast? And if you have, would you?
We were on it, or we taped one, and for some reason they threw it away after we were on or something.
Well, I'm not sure what happened. One time when we were in Atlanta, we actually taped with Tom and Crow, I believe, and with you. A Space Ghost, and it never aired for some reason. Who knows what happened? But so we feel, slighted. And
do we get to kill him? Do we get to kill him?
Yes.
Just all the con, just up and move.
Sure. And so thanks again. The tech guys never get enough acknowledgement for what they do at this convention. And I'd like to thank the folks who put on Dragoncon for coming. Once again, the MST website folks, MST3Kinfo.com. And this dedicated group of people who came up and had us for breakfast. It was really wonderful to do that. And for all of you for showing up and for watching and enjoying what we do. Mike, anything?
Yeah, well, it's just, I just want to say thanks to all the fans that we met. It's just been the kindest group of folks we've run across. Everyone's been very nice and very respectful. This has been a great experience. So thanks to all of you.
We'll see you downstairs.